Bienvenidos a Trascendencia en Acción. Soy la doctora Xochitl Yadira. En este podcast exploraremos el proceso activo de ir más allá de nuestras limitaciones personales, sociales y profesionales para alcanzar un nivel superior de comprensión y existencia. Únete a nosotros mientras discutimos estrategias y compartimos historias inspiradoras que muestran cómo la trascendencia se manifiesta en acciones concretas, llevando a un cambio real y significativo. Descubre cómo puedes trascender tus límites y vivir una vida llena de propósito y realización. Las opiniones expresadas por los invitados en este podcast son propias y no representan necesariamente la opinión de la doctora Xochitl Yadira ni de Trascendencia en Acción. Welcome to Trascendencia en Acción. I'm Dr. Xochitl Yadira. In this podcast, we explore the active process of going beyond our personal, social, and professional limitations to reach a higher level of understanding and existence. Join us as we discuss strategies and share inspiring stories that demonstrate how transcendence manifests in concrete actions, leading to real and significant changes. Discover how you can transcend your limits and live a life full of purpose and fulfillment. The opinions expressed by the guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily represent the views of Dr. Xochitl Yadira or Trascendencia en Acción. Hello, buenas noches, buenos días, buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a un episodio más de Trascendencia en Acción. Por el día de hoy tengo un par de invitadas especiales, así que este podcast lo vamos a hacer en inglés, pero como ya lo he compartido en otras ocasiones, vamos a poner las traducciones y cuando suba el video en YouTube los invito a que cambien las captions al idioma que ustedes gusten, yéndose al menú y cambiando el lenguaje. Así que con eso vamos a empezar. So hello everyone, we're going to be doing this podcast today, this episode in English, because I have two special guests that are here with us to talk about some very important things. And so with you guys, welcome to Trascendencia en Acción, Angelina and Kelly.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. I know we were recently introduced about some very important things that you guys started about a year ago. But before we get into the actual business, let's talk a little bit about who you guys are. So we'll start off with you, Kelly, just introducing yourself. Are you originally from here, from Milwaukee? Do you live here? And tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. My name is Kelly, and my last name is Yeager. I actually grew up in New Berlin. Right now, I live with my husband and my one son in Heartland. So I grew up here in Wisconsin. I do have a son that lives in Denver, Colorado, and I have another son who lives in Sussex and a granddaughter that just turned 2.
How are you, Grandma?
Grandma.
You look so young.
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
How about you?
So my name is Angelina Harrell. I've been married to my husband for 7 years, together 15. I have 6 beautiful stepkids, and I don't have any kids. But I am from here, and I was raised by my grandmother. My family is from Guadalajara, Jalisco. So my dad is from there. So I have a lot of family, and then I have some family from Veracruz that owns a Mexican restaurant called El Tanapa on 107th and Brown Deer. So yeah.
Yo, I have to go check it out. So I was born and raised in Veracruz.
Oh, okay.
And then I go to Guadalajara more than I can count. So
that's good.
I love Guadalajara. Well, thanks to both of you for being here. So one of the things that I learned recently is about a business that you guys both have. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did that come about? What is your business about? And how do you guys came about, even just the vision about why you wanted to start your business? Whoever wants to start.
I've been an estate planning paralegal for 28 years. So it's the only law that I've really worked in. Angelina and I worked at a law firm together. She was there for, I believe, 12 years. I was there for 7. We're just really hard-working individuals. And basically, we were running the law firm and making money for somebody else. And that's why we decided to start our freelance paralegal business. And with Angelina's background in Spanish and her following, it's been great. We have been blessed, for sure.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so I have 19 years of experience, and me and Kelly she worked there 7 years, so I've known her for 8 years. In August, it'll be total. But yeah, so she brought it up to me that we should do our own thing. So at first I thought about it, but I was like, okay, well, maybe we can do this, but like she motivated me. So I was like, okay. And me being in the restaurant industry and stuff and knowing the people and building those relationships and stuff, it's something that we both agreed that we like to help people. So more than anything, that was very important to me.
That's awesome. And so that's how A&K were born. So what's the
We
name
were
of your
born.
business?
A&K Experienced Paralegals, LLC. So like I said, we freelance, so we work under attorneys. So attorneys check all of our work, but we're able to meet with the clients and draft the documents. And Angelina does most of the talking. All the initial phone calls, the calendaring, things like that. Because it's what she's good at and she likes to do it.
Yeah.
So she does that, and it just gives us the opportunity to make some money for ourselves.
Yeah. So I'm completely new to this, right? And as we were talking offline, is that I was even just looking out some of the services that you guys offer, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But one of them is like helping with the testament, right? And I looked it up, and about 67% just here in the U.S. population don't have a testament, myself included. So talk a little bit about what does that encompass? Why is that so important? And why do people normally don't see it as you should have this? What has been your experience with that?
So for us, it's very important, like for people to know this information, especially a lot of the minorities, and a lot of people that are Hispanic don't know. They think that life insurance is everything. And we found that to be one of the issues as we've networked and met different people, and they think that that's everything. But what they don't know is that it helps to avoid probate. So that's why you need to have an estate plan in order to avoid probate. And to basically put at ease on your family and how you want those assets to be distributed, which is what the trust does normally. And then basically we would like to build that relationship more than anything with the client, whether it's talking about estate planning and helping them do that. And then if in the future they need us for other services, we have grown our clientele to be that relationship. We want to grow that with the client.
Okay. And Kelly, what does, like, dumb it out for me, what does a testament really encompass? Because a lot of people, and I even myself, but think like a testament is obviously when you talk about assets, it's like my things that I own that I would like to live to my kids if I pass, or if I have a house, who do I live it to? But really, what does it like encompass altogether, and what is a probate?
Sure. So last will and testament, I think, is what you're talking about. And that is for somebody that maybe doesn't have a lot of money, maybe doesn't have any real estate, has, maybe under 50,000, so their estate wouldn't be subject to probate. It's something that people still need because it's going to distribute their property how they want it to go to. If they want it to go to their children or to charity, it also divides and distributes their personal property. So there are things that they have in their house, their couches, their furniture, if they have any jewelry, and that the last will and testament would distribute that accordingly. So they would name a personal representative to take care of that after death.
Okay.
What we like to talk to people about is a trust, and that's normally a revocable trust, and that is the part that avoids probate. So there is a deed that normally is done if they own real estate. We do a transfer on death deed, and then Angelina at the end helps them with funding of the trust. But what is probate? Probate is a court process, and normally if anybody that owns over $50,000 in their own name, if they pass away, it goes to probate. It's not the end of the world, but it is expensive because we have court costs. We have documents, so normally an attorney has to be involved. It can take anywhere up from 12 to 18 months to get it closed.
Wow.
Yeah, and probate, it leaves the door open to be contested. Okay. So if there's a long-lost son that thinks that he should get some inheritance.
Right. We've seen it a lot.
We have seen a lot
not just
of things.
movies, right? It's reality.
It is reality, and we've seen it a lot. And a trust avoids that because it's not public. It's not filed at the courthouse. Okay. If you don't have a trust or any estate planning documents, you're going to go to probate, and then it's open for everybody to see and contest. Wow. So not only is it expensive, but it takes time and it opens everything up.
Yeah, and then to think about, right? Like if you're thinking about like a deceased person, imagine like the headaches of the family having to deal with that on top of even just grieving the loss, but even now have to figure out, right? It's wow, that's incredible.
A lot of times they can't even pay for the funeral. So then we're getting phone calls saying, my mom or dad passed away. We can't get at their account. Nobody has money to pay the funeral.
Wow.
So it does get sticky sometimes, but with an estate plan, everything's kind of smooth.
Planned out.
It's planned out and smooth.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the services, right? So when you're meeting with a new customer, let's say myself, and you take the consultation, what are, first of all, some of the services that you offer? And then how would you dumb it out for me when I don't understand any of the terms? So like the trust and all of that. Let's just talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So the trust, we like to say it's like a pot. And then we put all your assets, like all your money stuff, like your bank accounts, your life insurance, your retirement accounts, all your personal property, any rental properties. If you own a business and you have an LLC, like we put that trust is basically once you guys pass away.
Like you bundle it, bundle it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's how everything will be distributed upon the death, upon your passing.
Okay. And what are the different services that you offer? So you have the trust, you have the testament, and what?
Oh, the last will and testament, which says how personal property should be distributed.
Okay.
And then the financial power of attorney, which says that you can make financial decisions for your loved one while they're alive, but are unable to make payments. And then the healthcare power of attorney, which for medical decisions. And then we do the deed to the trust, which basically making the trust the beneficiary, but it stays off the record, so no one will really know that they own a trust, until they pass away.
And so, like in this case, for instance, this would be for, let's say, you're meeting with me, so that I can assign somebody to make those decisions. So, like for the health one, I can say my husband can make decisions, or my oldest child can make decisions financially, etc. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, the healthcare has to be activated by a doctor before you can make any decisions. For if you named your husband, your power of attorney would be activated first.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. And can you dive a little bit into what does a trust mean? Like, dumb it out for me. What does that even mean? Because I've heard about it in different contexts, but for the audience, just to know a little bit what and how that breaks out. Do you have examples of how people can relate to it?
Sure. So there's a revocable trust or an irrevocable trust. 90%, I would say, of our clients do a revocable trust, which means it can be changed. So if it's changed down the road, if your kids grow older, or they get married, or they have grandchildren, then we can do an amendment to the trust later and add, that amendment gets added to the original. So it's called the revocable trust, and it's the name of the trust is normally your last name.
Okay.
And then we do the date that you sign. So it would be, the Jaeger Trust dated March 5th, 2025. That would be the name of your trust. Then within that trust, you would name a trustee, a successor trustee, and normally a backup. So if we would do something for you and your husband, you would both be primary trustees of your own trust, meaning you take care of your assets how you normally do. The assets are still yours. The trust is just the beneficiary. So then upon the death of both of you, then you would name a successor trustee, and that person's job would be to fill the pot and then distribute it according to your trust.
Okay.
So if you have, say, minor children, without getting too legally here or too confusing, a testamentary trust is built within the trust, and all that is a trust for minor children. Okay. So it kind of says who the trustee is, that names guardians, right, of who would take care of any minor kids. It would say when the minor kids would get the money, at what age, if they're 25 or 30, when you want that money distributed to them.
Okay.
So a trust not only avoids probate, but it also takes care of minor children. If you want to leave money to grandchildren or charity, that's done through the trust as well.
Okay. So you're probably going to laugh about this because my own type of trust and testament is like when I travel, I write in a little piece of paper what I want, and then I take a picture, and then I send it to my best friends. Like, hey, if something happens to me, this is what I want.
We've seen that done, right, Angelina?
Yeah,
but
we've seen it done. But
it needs to be, it's not legal, and it needs
So
to
it
be
wouldn't
witnessed.
hold?
It wouldn't hold.
Jesus, even if I send a text?
No, it would need to be witnessed properly, notarized probably, but there has to be certain things.
Well,
in the
especially with
document.
AI, right? Like my friends could totally be making it up and be like, yeah, anything she owns.
Yeah.
Goes to them, right?
They'll be like, oh, do you have that documentation? You know?
Right.
What has been some of those stories that you hear that are like crazy stories that you would never think about that happen most commonly right now with what you guys do in your line of service?
We had a client that the dad passed away like 3 years ago, and he just came to our office, and the bank noticed that the father had passed away, but the house was only in his name. So now, because they need to renew their homeowners insurance, they have to now they have to open up probate, and now they're charging the stepmom, his widowed wife, a lot for homeowners insurance. But again, this would have been avoided if we would have taken care of it sooner.
Right.
And now his son is the personal rep, but now he is going to be doing an estate plan once we're done with the probate for him. But I mean, he said he didn't know. He's like, I never knew that we had to go through this, but that would have been people don't have this information, and it's very important.
So what happens if somebody passes in this case, right? And there's a lot of assets. What has been some of your experiences or some cases that you've dealt with that now you think back and you're like, this is an example of a really good way of planning, and this is a really bad example, like in this case, of what could have been avoided and, save the family from going through this?
Yep. So who I'm thinking of, she was a hoarder. She didn't have any children, no husband. Her parents passed away. She had one brother in another state. She had a handwritten will, but it was executed properly.
Okay.
And she left it to Stevens Point College. And her brother didn't get anything, and she was very wealthy.
Wow.
Very wealthy. And she was in her late 90s when she passed away, and she hasn't gone to that school since, since she went to college. So I think she died at 96. If that was her wish, that's fine, that's where the money should go. I'm not quite sure that that's exactly what her plan was, but because we had to put it through probate, that's what happened to it. And I mean, there was millions.
Wow. So again, to your point, maybe she just never thought about it.
She never thought about it. Her father had a patent for a special envelope.
Wow.
And so, I mean, there was a lot of money there, and she just never did estate planning. She probably wasn't aware.
Yeah.
So so millions of dollars went to Stevens Point.
I mean, at least it went to a good cause, right?
Right.
Like a school education, but
Right. I mean, we kind of felt bad for the I think it was her brother or her nephew or something. But yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But I have another story quickly about a probate. And this is the one that I'll never forget. And it was probably over 20 years ago. The beneficiaries were in Egypt.
Oh, wow.
The decedent lived here, but all the beneficiaries were in Egypt.
So you can do that.
So we did it. Okay. We did it. Right. We worked with the consulate, and it was expensive. And every time you needed a notary or something for a document, there was a charge, but we did it.
Wow. And in your case, I mean, let's talk a little bit about minorities. I mean, culturally, and I can speak even for myself, this is not something that culturally, our parents teach us to do or even plan for. What has been some of the stories that, very similar that you can say this family really thought about it and they did it, or is it the majority that don't think about these things? What are your experiences?
Well, we found that a lot of Hispanics think that life insurance is enough, and it's not. and they really don't think about it. Or the most common is like, oh, I'm not going to die soon, or, oh, I don't have much, so who cares? Like they can deal with it, or, but it's like a lot of stress on the family once it happens. And, they're like, oh, well, I have money in the bank. I'm like, yeah, but if there's no estate plan or there's no will, now the account is frozen, and they won't be able to touch that money until, after the probate is over,
I mean, something is silly, but how many of us grew up with the stories of the grandma putting the money under the mattress?
Right?
Where does that money go to?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Whoever finds it first.
Yes, whoever finds it first.
Whoever finds it first,
Oh
right?
my God.
Yeah.
So do you guys also see in some of these experiences, let's talk a little bit about the health, for instance, right? I actually, and sort of related, but not. About 10 years ago, my father-in-law unfortunately passed away of cancer. And we were in the hospital and I was translating just because, my sister-in-law speak English, but of course in the moment, it was just like, I'll help. I actually studied medical terminology. So I was helping. And one of the biggest aha moments for me was that when I was translating what the physicians were talking and the nurses, and they didn't know that I was going to be translating in some instances. I remember we walked into the room and he was, it was on the last days, and he didn't recognize people anymore. He didn't have cognitive anything. And the nurse is holding his hand, almost about to make him sign. And I walk in there, and I'm like, what are you doing? And I just lost it. I went off on the medical staff. And what it done on me is that we didn't, as a family, knew about all of the different things. And he never really talked about decision making, right? And so as the doctor is talking about the different options, I remember my heart shattering because I'm listening and I tend to be very objective. I try not to be subjective or get into emotions when it comes to stuff like that. But it was really hard to have to translate to the family, your best option is X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And not knowing, right, he could have assigned someone to make the medical decisions, but who in the family would have made the right decision? How do you guys deal with cases like that? Do you coach or consult your clients and saying you should make sure you're picking the right person that's going to make the sound decision? You know what I mean? How do you know that?
Yeah. Well, the first page of it's a statutory form. And the first page does say all in caps, you need to make sure that the person that you're naming, your agent, is aware of how you want to live or not live. Do you want to be kept alive on feeding tubes or life support? Or do you have any specific, things that you don't want? We can put that in the document. But the whole first page does say that. So normally what happens is it's the spouse first, right? And then normally they would go down the line of their children. Or if they have someone that's a nurse or someone that knows something in the medical field or someone they trust.
Yeah.
That's who they're normally going to name.
I joke with my husband, I would never let you make my decisions. I'm like, hell no. I can make them for you.
Right. He'll pull the plug on you.
Kill that bitch. No, we can curse here, but.
Right.
But think about that, right? Even the power in that, that's a big decision. And we've seen how many cases that are probably not brought to life of, missed decisions that happen, not just in the medical field, right? And the example I was giving, I think the part that I learned about that, it was just a misassumption, because even after I talked to the faculty, the staff at the medical, they were like, we just assumed that he was understanding. And so when the nurse came in, because he would nod his head, she thought that he was acknowledging. Because that was the nurse. It was, some miscommunication. And I'm like, man, how many cases like this happen? Because there's not somebody validating, is this the right decision?
Right.
And I can't remember what it was for, but I want to believe that it was the decision of which treatment he wanted to take. And it was this is not for him to decide. He can't even understand. He's like, what do you mean he's not in his head? And I'm like, no, he literally can't understand.
Yeah.
But imagine in situations like that, or even financial, right? How do you know who's got the best interest in you? And so I'm going to pivot a little bit in Spanish too. So I apologize, Kelly.
Okay.
But I want this part, if you can say it in Spanish for our speaking audience. What are some of the services that we're talking about here? The phone number for your services, and if they want a consultation, how do they find you?
So nosotros ofrecemos hacemos plan patrimonial, fideicomisos, testamentos, poderes de financia y poderes de salud. Y más que nada hacemos documentos para lo de la propiedad cuando la gente fallece. La consulta es gratis. Nosotros tenemos una oficina en Brookfield, pero vamos hacia el cliente, es prácticamente lo que hacemos. Okay. So, la consulta es gratis, lo hacemos en persona, lo podemos hacer por teléfono, lo podemos hacer por Zoom, como el cliente quiera. Pero estamos aquí para ayudar a la gente más que nada, porque para nosotros es muy importante. Y si están interesados, nos pueden hablar al 414-313-6625 y podemos contestar cualquier pregunta que ellos tengan.
Y eso es importante porque, como estábamos hablando ahorita y vamos a poner las traducciones, hay tantos casos donde hay que tomar decisiones tanto médicas como financieras. Y yo, por ejemplo, hablaba un poquito de esto, me pongo como ejemplo. Yo no tengo un testamento y usualmente entre broma y broma a veces cuando viajo, que viajo mucho, hago una notita y se lo mando a mis amigas y si me pasa, pero pues eso no es algo legal, eso es algo que no validaría ante la corte. Así es que mi gente, si gustan más información, llámeles para que ellos les puedan ayudar. Así es de que nada más quería hacer esta pausa para hacerlo en español para la gente que nos escucha a veces en sus carros y no tienen tiempo. Los invito a que miren el video completo de YouTube y pongan la traducción para que aprendan un poquito más sobre este tema. All right. So I just wanted to do the little plug in there. It's important for our community. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other services that you guys offer. So I was looking at your flyer here and I was like, oh my God, what does that even mean? So something like peace of mind, avoid guardianship, protecting your real estate, like plan for incapacity, fulfill final wishes. I'm like, oh my God, like I think about like make a wish type of thing, but what does that mean? Like what are some of the examples and cases that you guys deal with?
So like some people want to be cremated. Some people already have like pre-funeral planning. Some people don't, we ask those questions. Some people say, oh, well, I don't know. I don't want to do the DNR. Like they do not want to be resuscitated. We can add it to the document, but normally that's a special form that they would have to ask their doctor, and then they would get like a bracelet to wear. So if anything was to happen, the EMT people will see that, and it's a do not resuscitate bracelet. So like, what they want, like if they want, a lot of people don't want a funeral after they pass away. We've seen that they just want to like have music or like a big homegoing and stuff. So it's just like a lot of things of how they want. But 9 times out of 10, like we just see people that are like, oh, well, we don't know what we want to do. You know what I'm saying? Like what,
Right. Well, who thinks about their death, right? And I mean, but it's so important. I think as sad as it is, and as something that we don't think about as a society because we're just not wired that way, it's like so important. And I always joke with my kids, and I probably should take this very seriously since I'm doing this podcast. But I'm always like, you guys are going to bury me with a banda. I don't want no crying. And you're going to cremate me and then just throw the ashes in the ocean because I don't want to feed the damn worms. But it's like things that, even like lately, I don't know why I've been having this dream. Like, and I tell my kids, I was watching a movie the other day. It talks about like memory loss and like what if you get Alzheimer's or dementia. And I always tell them, if I ever get to a point where I can't recognize you guys, I don't want to be in this world. Like put me down, literally. But things like that, I can't just put that on my kids. I mean, I have to really make it into, maybe something written like that's my wish, is things like that you're talking about.
Right. And there's other people that have that same wish. I remember it was along the same line, and we asked an attorney if we could put that in the document that she wanted. I don't know how to put it nicely, but she basically wanted her daughter to unalive her, we'll say.
Yeah.
And her dog, if something like that happened to her. No, of course, we couldn't put that in the document, but we just told her to make sure that her daughter knows. And, we really couldn't do anything with that information. But
I mean, I'll say it because I'm not in the legal services, but think about what that means, right? Like you're putting your loved one in a situation of literally almost like killing you.
Right.
Or you're asking them to like help you end your life. And that can be so misconstrued and so mistaken. I mean, with so many things that we see, especially in today's crazy world.
Right.
How do you even know that that's right? I mean, that's heavy stuff that we don't talk about.
Right.
How do you go about, for instance, you said that you work and you consult with, obviously lawyers. At what point do you engage with your clients and then have them meet the lawyers? Or are you guys sort of the middle person, the license? How does that work?
Yeah, so most of our clients either have a phone conference or meet with the attorney first. Okay. Then the attorney gives us the information. We draft the documents, then we give them to the attorney reviews, and then we'll sign the documents with the client. So normally they speak with Angelina and we get them on the calendar and things like that. We have an easy form that needs to be filled out so the attorney has some basic information, and then we just go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's definitely that, again, going back to the initial of building and trusting that relationship, because even as a customer, I'm very, very how can I trust you?
Right.
How do I know that you're doing this? Especially, I'm assuming for the Spanish speaking, right? Like, do you translate everything for them? Like the documents too, so they can have something to, how does that work?
Yeah. So what we do is obviously we do the first initial meeting, and then, we do drafts of the meeting, so they'll get documents. But more than anything, we do an outline in Spanish.
Okay.
So that because it's very important for me and Kelly and the attorneys work for that. The client understands what they're signing,
right?
And it is up to par what they want. It's their wishes and their estate is in order. So we have done an outline in Spanish, and everybody that we've done it for, they said it's so easygoing and stuff.
Right.
And they're like, oh, when do we gotta sign? And I'm like, I was like, just review it on your time. Take your time. I want to make sure. Want to make sure it's right. And then they'll have questions, and then we'll do normally the second meeting we'll do it over the phone because they just want to make sure everything's in order. If we got to make changes, if there are a lot of changes, then we'll redo the draft so that they can review again. And then after that, we just either go to the client's house or they come to our office.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? Because I'm even thinking of myself when I used to be in one of the reasons I left the medical field is because I couldn't handle, I have a chicken heart as much as strong as I want to be.
I wouldn't,
I just couldn't handle translating. And I remember one of those horrific moments was when I had to translate that this child had just been diagnosed with a terminal disease, and the parents, I started crying before I could even translate. And I was like, I can't do this. But one of the things that I realized is that a lot of the terminology, especially legally, can be so lost in translation. So you guys make sure that you're not just translating, but whether it's in English or Spanish, making sure that the terminology makes sense to your customers.
Right, and that's really important to us. Yeah. They need to know what they're signing.
Right. I mean, this is important decisions. Let's go a little bit more about, obviously you share a little bit of how you guys started the business, but how did you guys get into this field? Was there a transcendent moment for you guys, or was there something pivotal that you were like, this is what we want to do? Because let's be honest, doing a work like this is because you have to have a calling. I want to almost say, I'm sure you're not doing it for the money.
Right.
No, I'm sure that's part, right?
But
part of it has to be a calling is because, and I can tell, I'm really big in vibes. I can tell you guys really, truly, genuinely do it from the heart.
We do.
How did you guys get to this is what we want to do to help people? We'll start with you, Kelly.
Yeah. The big reason that I did is because I love helping elderly people. And when I started out 28 years ago, it was an estate planning attorney that I started with, but that person also did elder law. So with elder law, meaning Medicaid and things like that, it also meant estate planning documents. So this is really the only law that I've known, and I'm just comfortable with it. And like Angelina said, we just like helping people. and we're comfortable educating people. You know, the biggest question we have when we talk to people, they say, well, how much is it going to be monthly? Right. So when we're talking about insurance, when they think insurance is enough, you have a monthly premium. With estate planning, they think it's the same way. And it's not. Of course, it's one fee and you get all your documents. There's a little follow-up that has to be done. But the documents are done and there's a one-time fee. So, yeah, I started 28 years ago and I've stayed in the same field, same area.
So me being I've been having 19 years of experience, but I have different areas of law. So like, I like the variety in the attorneys that we work for. We have like different, like criminal and small claims and probate. So like, I do like different areas of law, but I was raised by my grandmother who was elderly and I took care of her. So I know, you know, what it is to be in the situation at age 30, making medical decisions, not knowing like what to do with that, you know, and when she disinherited all her kids, that was very like, oh, okay, you know, like she's like, you're making my decisions. I'm like, okay. I was like, this is not good, but yeah, it was basically, and I love the elderly and helping the elderly people, and anybody that I could help more than anything is very good to me. Like, I mean, I had one of my friends, her dad was dying of cancer, and he had like 2 properties or whatever, and she's like, oh, well, they don't know if, you know, they're going to send him home for hospice, but, you know, I don't know if you're going to be able to come like tomorrow. So I was like, dang, I was like, you know, I'm like, I got to go, because I'm like, what if something happens? I don't want that to lay on my heart. And then his properties would go into probate. Right. So for me, that is, you know, that is very important, just to like build the long lasting relationship with the client and being available and seeing whatever else we could do to help them. Yeah. You know.
And I can tell that you guys just like pour, you know, that wanting to help people. And so it's so important for not just the audience, but also to pass it on, because I mean, it's been going through my head. I'm like, oh my God, yeah. I have to get on it. And I'm thinking about like, you know, friends that, you know, could benefit from this, or even just public knowledge of, you know, you're doing this. And it's almost like, I'm sure it's like a cliche of like, well, I don't want to do it because I don't want to call that upon me, or I don't want to do it. And then,
we hear that a lot.
I was going to say, is that something you guys
are? I'm going to sign it and get hit by a bus.
Yeah. Or what if we already started the first meeting? What happens if we don't, we just have the drafts? Oh, then we got to sign it right away because something might happen to us. Right. And we're like, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. But then I'm sure you guys get, like, you share, right, some of the crazy stories where somebody passes and then the family are left. And, you know, imagine all those families that don't have good terms to begin with are probably fighting over everything, right? So what has been some of, like, the craziest things that you've experienced in starting on your own?
Do we have crazy?
So far, not crazy.
Not crazy. I mean, not that I can really think of that's like off the rocker crazy. I mean, I have stories from before we started our business, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, maybe share one of those. Was that probably one of the triggers why you guys wanted to, I mean, aside that you were bringing all the benefits to somebody else.
Right. The story that I can think of is, there was a 96-year-old lady or something like that sunbathing nude on her driveway.
Oh, wow.
So, of
course. Talk about
freedom. Another wealthy person. And they did a Chapter 55, I believe it is. It's a forced guardianship because her husband passed away and she didn't have any kids. So, it's one of those. So, we had to do a guardianship for her. But she was also a sharpshooter. So she had ammo and guns everywhere. Like you would put your hand in a sconce and there would be bullets in there and ammo and cash everywhere. So she had safe deposit boxes, but they were filled with yellow pages and her money was all at home. And that's the craziest thing that I think I've worked with.
Oh my God.
Yeah. She was a pistol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. So what are some of the other things that you would like people to know as you're, you know, getting more into the weeds of your business now? You guys said you've been on it for almost 2 years now.
Right.
And so what has been some of those experiences that you see like an increase on? Especially right now with everything happening, do you feel like there's even like a much more increase on the want from people to get some of these services?
I do. You want to talk about the limited power of attorney?
Yeah, so we do limited powers of attorney for people who have minor children under 18. And that basically, if case they were to get deported or whatever, it makes it effective the day that they sign it, so that they have a backup guardian for their children to act in school or for medical reasons and stuff like that. Okay. So we do that. And then we also, big thing on the properties for people, like the deeds and stuff of what, if they were to go, did they put it and pass away? They do like transfer and death deeds where it goes to their kids in equal shares if something were to happen, to protect it from probate.
Okay.
So those are the two main increases. We've done wills too, in case they were to pass away, but mostly it's been the limited power of attorneys in case that they do get deported.
Yeah, and obviously with the changing environment, I mean, we won't get into politics, but I feel like there's an increase even just in general, right? Like making healthcare decision making.
That's true. And our clients seem to be younger and younger.
Yeah.
Just doing planning for their minor kids. But I guess two important things that I can think of is, one, if you have a blended family, it's super important to do estate planning documents. Because then, all kids from both sides are treated fairly.
Right.
So that's important. And then the other thing, I lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Babe.
Oh, yes, is the special needs trust. Right. So if you have somebody, a beneficiary that maybe receives SSI or a disability payment, then we can do a supplemental needs trust so that they can stay on the benefit but still receive an inheritance.
Okay, so let's dive a little bit into that, because this is the first time I'm hearing about that. It's super interesting. So when you talk about like the first one, for instance, how does that get decided? What does that even mean, and what is the terminology that goes into that?
Sure, for the blended family?
Yes. Like, what is a blended family? Let's start with that.
Okay, so blended family could be a second marriage, and then each spouse has children. Okay, so then you have stepchildren.
Okay.
So that would be distributed through the trust or an estate plan. So if you had stepchildren, you could distribute half to them, half to your children throughout the trust, or whatever percentages you would want to do. And then after the death of one of you, that trust becomes irrevocable. So if something would happen to you, you can't go and take your spouse's children out.
Oh, okay.
So a blended family is super important to have an estate plan.
So we wouldn't have like the Cinderella case, right?
Right, exactly.
Like exactly. Sisters, you're not our sister.
Right. To have percentages and just to make sure that both sides are treated fairly.
I mean, we joke about it, but let's think about it in reality nowadays. I mean, I haven't looked at research, but I would want to believe the data is probably very high of how many blended families are out there, right? Second marriages, or having kids from another family, or does this also qualify for like religious decisions, things of that nature? Do you guys get into that kind of stuff, like religious protecting?
If we were to do something, that would normally be in the healthcare power of attorney.
Okay.
So if you have religious beliefs that maybe you can't have a blood transfusion or something like that, that could be in the healthcare power of attorney. Now, if you're saying you want your children to be raised a certain religion, that can go in the document itself, in the trust itself.
Wow. And that's super important, because
it is.
I was actually watching this new series in Netflix, which I had a little bit of time, so I started splurging a little bit. It's called On Point, and it's like the story of this girl who becomes a basketball owner of, I guess it's something in California. But one of the things that like stuck with me was the fact that she talks about, like decision making and what the father, left in the will, and how the company should be run. And I was like, oh, wow, this is so intriguing. And one of the episodes talks about that she's engaged and she's about to get married. and she's converting. Like, she has no religion whatsoever. She's as crazy as I am, or more. And she's trying to convert because her partner is Jewish. And so they talk a lot about what does that mean. And her dad had put a clause in his testament that if any of her children were to convert to any religion, he lists like all the religions, right? That they are absolutely forbidden from everything.
Wow.
And so you're talking about this made me think about that, right? But I'm like, can you imagine? Like, we don't talk about those things. But like, for instance, I was raised Catholic, right? Like, I went through all the sacraments and I used to go with my grandma to everything.
Yeah.
And as I grew up and as I, raised, I'm not going to say I'm not Catholic anymore, but I don't agree with a lot of the practices.
Sure.
I'm still faithful.
Sure.
But I think about it, I'm like, would I want my kids to follow something if I would want that to be dictated? Or would I want them to avoid something? Like, you guys do you see a lot of those cases?
We don't see a lot. If it gets too far into depth or into detail, we would tell them to type a separate letter and put it with their estate planning documents.
Attach it to their documents.
Yeah, if it's something where you want your children to keep going to maybe a parochial school or something like that, we would put that in the documents so that your trustee would follow that wish.
Okay. And I guess it would be mostly applicable to children, right? Like,
I would think so. Yeah. Unless it was a situation like you were just saying. If you
it's
switch
crazy.
Religions, you're out of the will.
Yeah.
I mean, and nowadays, right, anything's possible. I mean, DI is going away, but come on. What are some of the other things that you guys see right now? Let's talk a little bit about, like, in the financial side of things, right? You talked about the importance, obviously, of having life insurance. I shared, right, like, I have my life insurance, I have my policies, but one of the things that I'm always a little bit nervous is because I have 3 kids. My oldest, 22, and she's a major beneficiary. And I always say, like, you will take care of your siblings. I know you will. But in something like this, even though I've assigned her and I've assigned the percentages of beneficiaries on my policies, does it have to match? Like, if I do a will, like, does it have to match the percentages, or how does that work?
So you would probably do a trust because you own property, right? Okay, so yeah, so
I mean, technically don't, because, like, in that case, would they also inherit the lawn payment? Like,
so basically, if you want the same percentages to match to the life insurance policy, then we would do it the same way in the trust.
oh, okay.
Because after you sign your documents, then we ask you, like, before that, I will ask you, like, do you have any bank accounts or CDs or money market accounts, any retirement accounts? And then we do funding letters to these institutions. And basically we let them know that you've created a trust. And so we help you fund the current accounts that you have, money assets that you have now. But then we also give you, like, a laminated card that tells you how to fund any future accounts, or if you decide to buy more property in the future.
And you add it as...
Yeah, you keep adding it as you go.
Okay, all right. And so what about, for instance, right now, let's say, like, the one, for instance, about decision-making and health insurance, health decision-making, what is the validity of some of those documents? Like, does it have to be stated, like, you can only make certain decisions for, like, the next 5 years, or only if I become ill? Like, what is the terms for some of those? What are they called? It's not a power of attorney, is it?
It's a power of attorney.
Okay.
There's the financial power of attorney, which is also called the durable power of attorney. And then there's the healthcare power of attorney, which we also do the HIPAA, right, for medical records.
Okay.
The durable power of attorney could be either immediate or springing, which means if you sign an immediate one, they have the authority, your agent has the authority to go and do anything financial for you as of the day it's signed.
Oh, wow.
If you do a springing, that means that you have to be declared incompetent before they can act. The problem with that is you probably need a guardianship. So, which means the courts are involved. So we try to educate people to do the immediate durable power of attorney and name somebody that you completely trust.
Right.
To do that.
Oh God.
And then the health.
I will struggle with that one. How are you making decisions? I'm still here.
A lot of times you just don't have to tell your agent that you have it done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that even possible? So you assign someone and they don't know? So they find out, like, how does that work?
Right. So they'll find out. I mean, eventually
My best friend will have a heart attack. How dare you?
Well, normally first it would be your husband, right? So this person would be a backup
Yeah.
anyway.
If your husband was unavailable to act, then there would be a backup.
Then there would be a
Got it.
backup.
Okay,
right.
okay.
But immediately they would be able to, your husband would be able to act.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's, of course, if you have a spouse. If not, you know, if you name a kid or something like that, one of your children, you got to just make sure that they're trustworthy.
Oh, boy.
It's a hard decision.
Yeah, and that they know where your stuff is at.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so normally we give like a binder and originals to clients, and we keep an electronic copy if anything were to happen. And then some do want an electronic copy, so we provide a flash drive of an electronic signed copy to them if they want to send it to their kid out of state or something, so that they can have it. But normally we don't recommend that they give a lot of copies out, because if in the future they want to make changes, you don't want to have all those copies out there and have to explain yourself.
Right.
And then they're going to be arguing about which one is the correct version after you pass away.
Wow. I mean, that's a lot of like stuff that, again, we don't as a society talk about or prepare about,
Right.
but it's so important. And thank you both for, you know, giving this type of service and to offer it to the community.
Sure.
One of the questions that I cannot leave without asking, obviously, because that's what my research was. It was about the well-being for transgender children.
Sure.
But diving a little bit into that, knowing that there's so much right now, and I'm even learning myself about all the medical decisions that need to be done, right, for somebody that's transgender or anyone in the LGBTQ community.
Exactly.
How do you guys deal with those? How do you get engaged into that? Do you guys see a lot of cases and decision making when it comes to that group?
We don't yet, though we are trying to target. I think we have a podcast coming up soon.
Okay.
On the 24th.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
Yes, because we
My
want to
friends.
target that community.
Saludos, todo postres.
Jose Pedro, Jesus y Pedro.
Yeah. I'm actually going to be coming to theirs to talk about my research findings, but so you guys are going to dive into that. Okay.
So important because,
yeah.
you know, normally they're not married, right? And then they
Right.
can't get
Right.
medical records. They can't make decisions. There's horror stories out there about their partners being isolated, not even being able to see them in the hospital.
Right.
So that's another reason why we want to target their area and try to educate and tell them the importance of having their estate planning documents done. And it's important to do it before something happens.
Right.
You know, we go to the hospitals and rehabs a lot to sign powers of attorneys so that they don't have to go through a guardianship.
Okay.
It's so important to have them done, especially in
Yeah.
those communities.
Yeah. What are some examples of some of the cases that you're trying to target? Can you provide some specifics of like, what are you thinking? Like when you talk about those that have partners, but because they're not legally married,
Right.
what are some of those examples?
Well, they can't, they just don't have the authority to do anything.
Okay.
So they're not married. Hopefully, I mean, I would hope that they had a great, communication and stuff with each other's families, but a lot of times they don't, the families don't accept them or something, or
Right.
their lifestyles. But then when something happens, those families come in and then they isolate their partners.
Right.
You know, we've seen it where they can't even see each other before they're having surgery.
Right.
You know?
And of course, because I specialize more in children, right? Anyone under 18 years old, that's another even dynamic, a huge element that I'm learning myself, because oftentimes the parents are the ones that have to make the decisions
Right.
for the children at such a young age, because these are children. They're
Right.
they're learning even what it means, yet alone having to make
Right.
big decisions. And oftentimes, if the parents are not even on board, and they don't even know how to go about it. I mean,
Right.
that's another element, right?
It
that I'm
is.
sure you guys will learn and dive more into. Like, how do
Right.
you guide the parents in having the right decision making, or having someone? And I think of myself, right? So my youngest, I've shared his story. I dread that, and I've been thinking a lot about, even as you were talking, I'm like, holy cow, I'm the one and my husband making all the decisions for him. What if me and him pass? Who's going to make those decisions on his behalf?
Exactly.
We haven't even talked about that.
And when he turns 18, I know you said you had a 22-year-old,
Yep.
right? So he should, is it your son, did you say, or your
The
daughter?
youngest is my son, and then my oldest is my daughter.
Your daughter. So you can't make decisions for her anymore.
Right.
She's over 18.
She's an adult.
So she needs her own power of attorney documents.
It just happened to me with my 18 years. I have 3. My middle one is 18, and I was so furious because he was hospitalized right before he turned 18. He turns 18, and I lose records to everything. And I was calling to even make payment arrangements, and they're like, "We gotta speak to him because he's 18." I was like, "This kid just turned 18," but things like that. Now he has to think about his own decision making.
Right,
Wow.
right.
Just like kids away that go to college, you know what I'm saying? Something happens at the college and the parents don't have any right to their financial so like you experienced it. So so that's another thing that we tell people too, like, oh, if you have kids over 18, we can help you do that and stuff like that. So that's very important for us.
And even for the big population right now, so all of our audience, if you have, and obviously this is something I'll talk to my daughter as well, because we have a big population of younger generations right now, right? And kids that are either still in school, but they're over 18 or they're in college. And we have a lot of them that have to make important decisions. And oftentimes they don't, let's even just talk with the Spanish barrier, the language, don't include their parents because, first of all, well, why would I even bother explaining this to my parents? I'll just decide on my own. But to your point, God forbid something happens to them.
Right.
And the parents are not involved in their day-to-day life.
Exactly.
Like, God, my daughter goes to Carol and I barely know half of her schedule, right? But things like that, like you would encourage these younger kids to come and learn about what this means.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
My son studied abroad in Spain, and I did his powers of attorney before he left. So I was able to sign a lease for him. I was able to do his taxes, transfer money and things like that. So it's important once they turn 18 to really
lose the power.
Basically.
And touching back on like what you said about your son, like if something, like you said, if something were to happen to you and your husband right now, like you don't have an estate plan, so your son would have to get a guardianship. Like your family just can't just take over like that because you didn't have that stated in an estate plan.
Wow, that is like you just trigger there. I was like, and that's so important, right? Even just in the day to day. I mean, not only just because what you alluded to earlier, right, with everything happening, the fear of the deportations right now, but even just day to day decision making for our loved ones, our children, or if you have aging parents, something happens to you, who will take care of them and make those decisions? Right. It's such important, thing. So we're coming at the end of our time here. Okay. What would be some of your parting comments and things that you would want people to know about the both of you?
Well, that insurance isn't enough. You need more than life insurance. Even if it's not a revocable trust that you do or draft, at least get your powers of attorney and a simple will done. Some people aren't scared of probate. It's not a scary process. It's just expensive and it takes time. Yeah. And like I said, it becomes open record where if you do your estate planning documents, prepare while you're well and feeling good, maybe before you're going on a trip or something like that. Just prepare and get it all done before something happens.
And when you say open record, what does that mean? Open
record means at the courthouse, anybody can go and look at your file.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So basically...
So a probate is open record. We can just go down there.
They can go on CCAP and type in your name and they can see if something's been filed.
Wow. Right. And I'm assuming when you say that, where my mind went is like we've seen so many cases of vulnerability where people take advantage of that and then try to pull something right. So it's important to understand the difference because even I learned about that recently. I was reading an article about the spike on elderly right now with their, taking money away from them and how they fall into all these scams. That's because the scammers go into these open records. They steal all the information and that's how they find out and that's how they scam. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know about all these things. So it's important to highlight why.
It is, right. Just to have a trust or something like that, then people won't even know about it.
It's protected.
It is protected.
Okay, great. How about you, Angelina?
So, I mean, for me, it's like if you have a question or you're not sure about protecting your property, that to me is like very important. Just call us. I mean, it's just a phone call. It's free of charge. Anything we could do to ease your mind or to assist you. We also do like the travel permission slips if you're sending your kids with your sister to Mexico or
good to
whatever. So we
know.
do.
Okay.
We also assist doing that. And then, like I was talking to you earlier off the record, that if you have MetLife through like an insurance plan, that's something that you can get a estate plan done. We work with the MetLife insurance plan, and we have 2 attorneys that do that for us. So
Wow, so much to know. So
Right.
we'll definitely put all of your details and tag you so people can reach you. But thanks so much for sharing a little bit more about, not just the services that you do, but a little bit more about yourselves and why you guys got
Right.
into this.
Right.
It's such an important topic, and especially in today's chaotic world that we live in.
Right.
So thanks again to both of you for being here, and
Yeah, thank you.
look forward
thank you
to
for having
sharing
us.
more of your
Yeah.
information in social media. So with that, mi gente, we're gonna wrap that up. But again, this is such an important topic that we don't talk a lot about in society, and so I urge you to check them out, reach out to them. That you heard them, it's a free consultation. And if it's even something that is intriguing you to learn more about it, just call them and find more about it. I know I will, because now my head is going a million miles an hour. I'm like, oh shoot, I should probably get all this in line. So thanks so much for your service.
Thank
and
you.
pleasure having
Thank
you
you.
here.
Too. Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.